Welcome to The Other Opinion. This is your shortcut to being truly well-informed, especially when it comes to those really fascinating, maybe less talked about perspectives, without all the information overload. Today we are taking a deep dive into, well, the truly polarizing world of superhero cinema. We're focusing intently on Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. I mean, this is a film that just ignited intense debates, didn't it? And it laid a pretty controversial foundation for a whole cinematic universe.
It really did. And what's particularly compelling about our source material today is that it offers, well, a surprisingly optimistic vision. It really explores why this film works, and how it deliberately set out to redefine such a beloved character for a totally new era. It kind of challenges a lot of those initial criticisms head on.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're drawing heavily from this insightful essay called Why Man of Steel Works. It was originally published on Movie Pilot back in 2015 and then revised in 2016. And it offers this really unique, kind of critical perspective on Man of Steel's place within what we now call the Snyderverse.
Right, which also includes Watchmen, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and of course Zack Snyder's Justice League. So our mission today really is to unpack the author's arguments. We want to understand the specific ground rules they set for film criticism first, and then explore the intricate layers of character redefinition and symbolism that they highlight in Man of Steel. We want to try and understand why this film, despite having so many detractors, might actually be considered a really successful and, frankly, crucial piece of storytelling within that bigger narrative.
Right. So if you've ever found yourself wondering why Man of Steel sparked such, well, passionate reactions, or maybe if you're just curious about a deeper, more analytical look at superhero stories that goes, beyond the surface level stuff, then you're definitely in for an interesting journey today. Let's really dig into this. Okay, so to begin, the essay sets up some fundamental ground rules about how we should even approach film criticism. It really emphasizes that our experience of film is, at its core, deeply personal. What does the author really mean by that? And why is it so important for understanding Man of Steel?
Yeah, it's a really foundational point.
Yeah.
The author basically says that, look, while we can discuss objective facts about a film, the technical stuff, plot, cinematography, your subjective appreciation of it, that's always filtered through your own unique personality, your tastes, even your life history. So whether you're someone who prefers the classic, maybe more straightforward comic book Superman, or if you're open to a more, let's say, mythic film adaptation, the essay suggests both perspectives are totally valid ways to engage with the movie. It's about acknowledging your own lens, basically.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And a central idea here for this deep dive is that comic books and film are just fundamentally different mediums. How does the author suggest this difference impacts what we should expect from adaptations?
Well, this brings up a fascinating point about translation, right? What works in a comic book, with its fantastic surrealism and a world that's often unfettered by realism, that doesn't always, maybe shouldn't always, translate directly to the big screen. The essay argues that for a film adaptation to really connect with the most people, it often needs to kind of bridge the gap, between the purely imaginative stuff and how those events might actually look and feel in the real world. The author seems to prefer a fresh and more relatable approach for movies, one that focuses more on the mythic and human psychological themes rather than just like copying panels. It's about grounding the fantasy.
Right, grounding it. So this whole redefinition of the medium then sets up a massive shift for the character himself. How does the author argue Man of Steel specifically redefines Superman, makes him more human and complex? What's the core redefinition happening there?
It's definitely presented as a powerful and very deliberate move. The essay argues Man of Steel is intended as a substantial redefinition of Superman, making him simultaneously more human and complex, means flawed, right, and more mythic. And in that mythic sense, maybe even seemingly more tragic.
Yeah, this isn't your grandpa's Superman, that's for sure. And this reinterpretation is strongly backed up by quotes from Zack Snyder himself, Ben Affleck too, and even the former Warner Brothers CEO, Kevin Sujihara. Snyder apparently sees DC characters as purer archetypes, literally biblical.
Biblical, wow.
And Affleck calls them American myths, suggesting a more mythic, more grand, and a little more realistic approach. And Sujihara kind of reinforces this, saying DC films are inherently steeped in realism and they're a little bit edgier than Marvel's movies.
So the core of Snyder's vision then was to genuinely try and imagine what it would actually be like if these superheroes existed in our world, to sort of humanize them by making them vulnerable and burdened, and then express this through that ancient mythic archetype idea. Exactly. The essay describes it as shattering the old apple pie and Chevrolet Americana image of Superman, a deliberate effort to, quote, release the character from that world where he's been stuck and shackled and bring him to our world and see what he does.
Hmm. It's a really profound shift, almost uncomfortable for a lot of people, I think.
Definitely. Now, moving into the character's core. Fans have, long seen Christ-like parallels with Superman. And Man of Steel explicitly plays with some of these, but maybe tweaks them. Kal-El's miraculous birth, for instance, the first natural birth on Krypton in centuries, his role as a savior sent from the heavens, his active, chivalrous self-sacrifice to Zod to stop universal destruction, it all clearly aligns with those kinds of themes.
And Jor-El's vision for Kal, it's incredibly profound, isn't it? To inspire and lead the people of Earth to realize their greatest potential, to teach mankind about hope, choice, and how to be good and overcome evil. But the film doesn't just present him as this, like, ready-made perfect hero, does it? How does the author suggest Man of Steel complicates that heroic ideal right from the get-go?
Well, that's a crucial tension in the film. It immediately introduces Superman not as the confident, fully formed hero we might expect, but as a wandering lost soul. Our first real glimpse of the grown Clark Kent. He's a vagabond, lacking confidence. And as the essay points out, he's maybe morally not above stealing someone's clothes and destroying a bully's 18-wheeler. He's still figuring things out. He's young.
Yeah, and this is where the controversy really kicks in for a lot of viewers, isn't it? Man of Steel essentially shows him as, well, morally undeveloped in some key moments. The most glaring moral failings people point to are usually Superman's perceived inaction, maybe, to avoid all that carnage during the battle with Zod, and of course his purposeful killing of Zod to protect those innocent people. These moments really split the audience. How does the author interpret them?
Oh, absolutely. Many fans felt those acts were just completely inconsistent with the classic Superman they knew. But the essay offers some pretty compelling alternative ways to look at it. For instance, Zod's immense power and his very clear tactical goal, which was to cause massive destruction. That might have made it genuinely impossible for Superman to just, drag him away from Metropolis or redirect his heat vision effectively in that kind of chaos. And crucially, the author really emphasizes that Superman is young and inexperienced in this film, which makes him vulnerable, flawed, and human, actually a much more relatable character than one who just always has the perfect, infallible solution, maybe.
Huh. The author even connects this to the myth of Hercules, right? Where the hero has to atone for past actions. So Superman's involvement in the destruction of Metropolis and the killing of Zod could serve a similar function. Not necessarily failures, but like pivotal, painful steps in his growth, his heroic development and eventual atonement.
Precisely.
Wow, that really makes you rethink your initial reaction to those scenes, doesn't it?
It does. And another huge point of contention was Jonathan Kent's advice. Pretty controversial stuff. He tells Clark not to save him from the tornado and even answers maybe when Clark asks if he should have just let that school bus drown.
Yeah, that maybe is rough.
It is. But the essay clarifies that Jonathan's concern isn't really about being callous. It's that there's more at stake than just those immediate lives. He's terrified of the catastrophic consequences if the world finds out about Superman before Clark is truly ready to handle that global scrutiny.
Okay, so the essay points to this confusing double bind created by his two fathers. You've got Jor-El, who believes in individual choice, learning from mistakes. He sees Kal having this destiny to save humanity, but then Jonathan Kent raises Clark with, no real choice at all, demanding he hide who he is because he fears how humanity will react.
Exactly. It's a super complex ethical dilemma for a young hero, isn't it?
Yeah.
Weighing an immediate good against a potentially much greater future good that could be totally jeopardized. It really highlights a tension that kind of defines the whole movie.
Okay, so moving beyond just Clark's character, a really common criticism of Man of Steel was that it felt more like an alien invasion movie that just happens to feature Superman. Too much focus on Krypton dying and Zod's invasion, and maybe not enough on Superman's personal journey. How does the essay push back on that?
Well, what's really interesting here is that the author argues that backstory isn't excessive at all. They say it's pivotal to the entire Batman v Superman story arc and even beyond. Superman's alien identity, Zod's attempt to destroy Earth, the massive collateral damage in Metropolis, All that becomes absolutely central to how people on Earth relate to Superman, how they react to him in the later films. The film basically sets the stage for this huge world-changing event that completely overshadows the individual hero. It establishes the immense context for his future struggles and the world's very conflicted reaction to him.
Hmm. And the source also praises the impressive and fascinating detail given to the Kryptonian backstory. It notes it borrows from John Byrne's 1986 The Man of Steel comic series, which apparently showed a much harsher, kind of emotionless Krypton with artificial childbirth. That's a very different take on his homeworld.
Very different. Yeah, this new Krypton operates on a kind of Darwinian model where survival through sheer power and dominance is placed at odds with the more abstract, maybe more sophisticated, survival value of morality. Feyerabend even says it outright. The fact that you possess a sense of morality and we do not gives us an evolutionary advantage.
Wow.
Yeah. So Zod embodies fascism, totalitarianism, while Jor-El represents good through things like freedom, individual choice, a healthy respect for nature, and moral conscience. It's like a clash of ideologies on a massive cosmic scale.
So Superman's own struggle with his identity is kind of mirrored or underscored by Krypton's rigid, genetically engineered caste system. And that's contrasted with his inescapable destiny here on Earth, which subtly connects to those American myth themes, right? Immigration, individualism, the tension between society and personal happiness.
Exactly. It makes him a champion of the American way, not by birth, but really by choice and his unique circumstances. Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the essay goes even further. It suggests a really profound, maybe even unsettling biological childbirth metaphor running through the whole film.
Whoa, okay. Biological childbirth metaphor.
Yeah, it's an intense reading. The author portrays Krypton as having male imagery. They describe the L Citadel as phallic, Kal's ship like sperm, the launch like ejaculation, and Earth is positioned as the egg being, quote, raped by Krypton's actions, specifically Jor-El sending Kal-El. This framing makes Superman a bastard, a product of a rape. It positions the film not as some cheerful superhero origin story, but as a mythic Greek tragedy.
Wow, that's a really bold interpretation.
It is. It really challenges conventional superhero ideas and helps explain the film's perceived joylessness. It's seen as part of a hero's painful journey of self-discovery.
Okay, well, on a slightly brighter note, the essay does also highlight Man of Steel's strong representation of empowered women, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Both Lara L., his Kryptonian mother, and Martha Kent are shown as rocks of Gibraltar. They're fearless, unyielding even when facing someone like Zod or just overwhelming circumstances. And Amy Adams' Lois Lane is depicted as sure-footed, adventurous, and daring, which is a nice counterpoint to some earlier, maybe more damsel-in-distress versions of Lois.
Right.
The essay even kind of teases the intro of Wonder Woman in BVS as a key development here, expanding the role of powerful female characters in this whole universe.
Okay. And finally, the essay tackles that common complaint about Man of Steel's mood, that unnecessarily dark and grim mood reflected in the very blue-gray color grading.
Right. Snyder's obviously used dark filtering really effectively in films like 300 Watchmen. But the author does sort of question if it was immediately the right fit for Superman, a character so often linked with brightness and hope.
But in the end...
In the end, the author finds that somber emotional tone acceptable, even fitting, actually, because it lines up so well with this redefinition of Superman's origin as a kind of mythic Greek tragedy. Clark is shown as constantly pensive, often looking emotionally weighed down and inwardly troubled, which makes sense given his huge burdens and epic responsibilities. And this pervasive mood directly sets up the tensions that explode in BVS as the world reacts to him not just as a hero, but potentially as a god.
Yeah, it paints a really compelling picture of a hero struggling with monumental weight rather than just, having fun with his powers. So, wrapping this up, what does this all really mean for Man of Steel? Our deep dive into why Man of Steel works. It really reveals this meticulously crafted argument, doesn't it? An argument for a film that deliberately, maybe even controversially, broke from tradition to redefine a classic character and set the stage for this ambitious, often polarizing cinematic universe.
Yeah, the essay makes a really compelling case that Man of Steel does successfully engage with its characters. It delivers a thought-provoking story, showcases strong filmmaking, and all while laying this really complex mythic foundation for the films that followed, portraying Superman's journey as this powerful, modern Greek tragedy.
And for the author of our source material, Man of Steel actually became their favorite Superman movie, precisely because it establishes such a rich and challenging story arc. It's a film that genuinely asks us to look beyond maybe our surface level expectations and appreciate its deeper themes, its mythic intentions.
And as you reflect on all this, maybe consider how our own expectations, which are so often shaped by past versions or established canons, how they fundamentally influence how we see new interpretations of stories we love. How might embracing a more realistic, maybe more mythic take on a character like Superman actually open up totally new ways for storytelling, even if it means confronting some uncomfortable truths about power and responsibility.
Yeah, food for thought. We really hope this deep dive has given you some fresh perspectives on Man of Steel and, well, the whole tricky art of adaptation. If you found this insightful, please do take a moment to like this deep dive. And definitely comment with your own other opinions and thoughts. We genuinely love hearing them. And make sure you subscribe to The Other Opinion for more fascinating explorations like this one.
Yeah, share it. Share it with your friends who might enjoy a fresh take on these kinds of subjects. It really helps us out a lot.
We'll see you next time.
Oh, and just a quick note from us. This was an AI podcast aimed at providing information. While we try our best to be accurate, some of it might be wrong. Just something to keep in mind.